Hello and welcome to Autology, the podcast that brings you the latest insights into automotive technology. I'm your host, Phil Amsrud, Senior Principal Analyst for the Automotive Semiconductor Research Area here at S&P Global Mobility. In today's episode, we're excited to have Nakul Duggal, Group General Manager, Automotive and Industrial IoT at Qualcomm, join us to dive into some really cool advancements in automotive tech as showcased at the 2025 IAA Mobility Show. Qualcomm has been leading the charge in innovation, and we can't wait to explore their cutting-edge technologies that are truly shaping the future of mobility. We'll chat about the impressive progress in both hardware and software, including those all-important end-to-end solutions and software-defined vehicles. Plus, we'll take a look at Qualcomm's roadmap for system-on-chips hardware and software that are designed to boost vehicle performance and safety. As we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of electric vehicles, we'll also discuss how new architectures like separate domain controllers, zonal architectures, and centralized systems are being influenced by the shifting EV roadmap. Welcome, Nakul.
Thank you, Phil. Great to talk to you again.
Yes, good to see you. So, 2025 appears to be a year of big announcements within the industry, including the BMW NK launch with you guys. Is this a critical phase for the industry to demonstrate the maturity and value of ADC solutions?
Yeah, I think, the industry has just gone through such a massive amount of change over the last 2 to 3 years, just big changes happening in SDV, in electrification, in ADAS. And we are really very excited about this partnership that we've had with BMW now for the last 3.5 years or so. It's a pretty unique partnership because, at least for Qualcomm, this is a first, and I think I can probably safely say first for many other companies to go work with an automaker to develop a software platform that then gets deployed at global scale and has the ability to be leveraged and extended over to other OEMs. So this is what we set out as the North Star for the partnership. When we connected back in 21, we acquired Arriver out of Veoneer in early 22. We integrated those teams, built a joint team with BMW, and here we are at the cusp of, launching this joint platform. So a lot has happened in a short period of time, and given the scale at which we are doing this and the ambitions we have for the stack, I must say it's a pretty important milestone for us.
Well, that's exciting. Can you unpack a little on how Qualcomm and BMW work together in terms of the development and validation of the stack? How the other ecosystem partners have played roles in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one thing that we are really proud of and, happy about is the choice of partnership with BMW, who has just been exemplary in terms of not just the learnings that we have received through the partnership, but their focus on safety, their focus on quality, their focus on being able to do something really at global scale. And those are things that we have frankly learned in a very concentrated short 3 years that we otherwise could not have learned any other way. So the way that the partnership is organized is we, Qualcomm, build a computer vision stack for the BMW platform, and we are guided, and BMW is really working alongside us all the way to make sure that we are building a stack to the standards that we have to adhere to, their standards and also regulatory standards the world over. So it allows us to build a stack, or it has allowed us to build a stack that becomes a globally certified stack on day one across pretty much every region, which is a big advantage. And, this is what I call a 0 to 1 business. We are now in the ADAS stack business, and prior to this, we were not. So to do that at this scale requires just a tremendous amount of coordination between our silicon teams, our software teams, our computer vision teams, the data collection, the data processing, the AI teams that are working on building the actual stack, and then continuous improvement. And you're doing this across 100 countries. So it really is a machine that we have built over the last 3 years. And I think that is the foundation. That's the primary sensor, obviously. And then we have worked with the BMW together to build the driving stack and the customer functions. And this is a unique partnership because this is an area where BMW engineers and Qualcomm engineers, about 800 engineers in total, came together to build the drive policy stack. And this is the stack that we deploying BMW vehicles, and then Qualcomm has access to the stack for us to go scale over to other OEMs. So the end result is we have a sensor configuration, a silicon implementation, the underlying software, the computer vision stack, the drive policy stack. All of it is homologated, certified, tested with BMWs. And then we have the ability to take that same platform, convert it to a normalized reference design, and scale it to any other OEM. So, complicated program, very ambitious, a lot of different moving parts, but, we are super excited that we have reached this milestone on time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the timing, because everybody talks about the automotive development design cycle has been compressed. You're demonstrating that, would you say, in 3.5 years, you went from kind of initial conversations to going into production. That's a practical example of the compression of the design development timeline.
Exactly.
So you talked about a lot of exciting things. What's one of the challenges that you had either overcome or that still keeps you up at night every now and then?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's taken us a little bit of time to get used to, it's a different culture when you have companies that have obviously not just different cultures, but come at the problem from very different perspectives. And OEM has a very different set of constraints and criteria. And we, first of all, being newer into this business with very clear ambition in terms of what we are trying to go build, but obviously a silicon company that's building a stack. So that, I think, is maybe where the difference is the most obvious. I think the other piece that was unique in our case is that we had also done a pretty significant acquisition. So through this journey, we were also actually integrating the Arriver teams into Qualcomm. And the Arriver teams have been a very instrumental part of the success that we have accomplished. So bringing in another company, integrating them into the culture, working alongside BMW in a joint development program, that I think was certainly the first time that we did something of this level of complexity. I think beyond that, I would say the partnership with BMW has really been excellent because we are not, we are thinking long term. We have a pretty clear idea that BMW wants to be in the business of stack development and differentiating around the stack. We know that this is an area that we certainly want to work with the leading OEMs on. And so that alignment has always been there. And, there are always ups and downs through all of these things. But I would say nothing that has really diverged us away from kind of what the goal has been.
So do you think with the launch of the NK platform that we really can use that as a stake in the ground, that the era of the software-defined car is now upon us? In practical terms, not just something that's on paper, but it's something that's being realized.
Well, I think, SDV is certainly upon us, has already been upon us. I don't think this specific launch necessarily defines that SDV is upon us because we are seeing this now getting deployed. Certainly, pretty much every OEM in China is an SDV platform, and then in the West as well, that transition is massively underway. I think for us, what this defines for us is we now have new software content in a vehicle that we were traditionally only providing silicon content. We are providing a driver assistance stack that then requires to be maintained, to be updated, to keep up with regulation, to keep up with new features. And that certainly is a brand new step for the company, for us. And I think creates a really good opportunity for us to participate even more broadly in the SDV journey.
So am I hearing you correctly, Nakul, that there's a portion of the stack that came out of this joint development with BMW that you can redeploy? There's a portion of the stack then that any additional OEMs could come in and add content to. So in terms of development cycles, the next engagement could see even a further compression of that 3.5 years that you'd mentioned earlier with BMW and still allow the OEM to bring their own unique content to the solution.
That's exactly right. So think of it like this. For the type of L2 plus system that we are deploying, if an OEM was to pick the same sensor configuration, wants to go deploy in the same markets with the same feature set, that is something that we can do very quickly because we would essentially have to think about what are the features that are unique to that OEM that they would like to add or subtract. And then what is the homologation that is needed for the sensors in the stack for the OEM specific chassis. Now, because just within BMW, there are so many different shapes and sizes and trims that we are deploying because BMW is such a broad fleet. It gives us tremendous confidence that what we are doing with BMW extends very nicely to most other passenger vehicles. It is a global deployment, so we are present in every country. And so the ability for us to take this platform and extend it over to the next OEM is simply a question of the homologation needed and any customization that OEM might need.
So how have recent advancements in end-to-end AI kind of enabled this, and how is Qualcomm's implementation of that unique? How do you guys differentiate your implementation versus others?
Yeah, so I think maybe two-part answer to that. I think as far as the silicon goes, one thing that we I think did quite well was to make sure that the silicon that we are building is future-proofed, is designed to be able to go deal with all the various advances in AI that are going on. So we are already in the process of developing the end-to-end AI stack on the same exact silicon configuration. So you don't have to actually change anything on the silicon. Now, as far as end-to-end AI goes, the way that these systems will evolve is you always need a very hardened underlying active safety stack, something that makes sure that in the absence of clear data, you know exactly what the safety principles are that the car is to adhere to. But beyond that, it's really a transition of a CNN-based, computer vision-based stack evolving to a transformer-based stack. And that is a journey that is ongoing. It's something that, is now widely adopted across many different markets. And we are building out an end-to-end AI stack for both the low-level perception layers, so something that takes all of the camera and radar inputs, fuses them together, and then a second pipeline for the drive policy. So there is significant simplification in the overall stack, but you're obviously now building a stack that is much more AI-centric in nature. And we expect that as we get through this next iteration, this next evolution, we will have a hybrid configuration, something that leans on the more conventional guardrail-based AI that makes sure it gives us the safety hooks that we need while we take advantage of the learning that end-to-end AI brings.
That's interesting. So you hear a lot of people talk about end-to-end as if it's a one-size-fits-all, that, I've got an end-to-end implementation, kind of problem solved, move on. But what I'm hearing from you is, well, there's more to a robust end-to-end implementation than simply, using end-to-end. You still want to have guardrails. You still need to have things running somewhat in parallel to ensure that under any and all circumstances, the vehicle's always in a known safe operating condition.
So when you think about end-to-end AI, the importance of the stack being an active safety stack that makes sure that it is guardrailed, it gives you the confidence and the security in all conditions, that is paramount. That requirement doesn't go away. As you collect more data, as you collect more scenarios, you can obviously enhance the performance of your stack from an end-to-end AI perspective continuously. And that's the journey that we are on. So we will obviously keep improving the quality of the stack with end-to-end techniques, but they're all going to be supported by the active safety foundation that is really important to make sure that it is secure.
Okay. You mentioned that this implementation for the NK is going to be L2+. In terms of SoC shipments for L2+ and above ADCs, S&P forecasts the global growth rate from 2025 to 2032 to be greater than 20%. In light of that, how do you explain Qualcomm's growth rate, which is more than double that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar so much with the percent, but let me explain to you how we are actually seeing the market evolve. As the market moves more and more towards central compute and software-defined vehicles, one big shift that we are seeing is a tremendous amount of interest in our Snapdragon platforms, both the cockpit, but also Snapdragon Ride and Snapdragon Flex, where we have on the same architecture the ability for customers to be able to run cockpit solutions or run an ADAS platform, or in some cases even run both concurrently. And we are starting to see a lot of customers embrace the overall Snapdragon portfolio as they start to move down the central compute and SDV architecture. And, we've talked about the size of the pipeline. You're obviously seeing a lot of this now come through in our quarterly revenues that we are disclosing. So we feel really good that the platform that, the portfolio that we have built for the Snapdragon platform for automotive has this very versatile, very multi-use approach. And as ADAS becomes a key part of our portfolio, especially the stack, that we will certainly benefit from. We certainly leverage from that. But when you start to think about other third-party stacks that are running on our silicon, we also benefit from that advancement. So we are certainly seeing a significant increase in the rate at which our win rate is going up and also the implementations getting deployed.
So you mentioned industry trend towards centralization. I'm curious because if we back up a few years ago, there was a lot of talk about, going to a single SoC that you could squeeze all domains into. And now there seems to be maybe a little backtracking from that. And I'm curious what you see the industry's thought process to be in terms of centralizing architectures into a single central computer, that's running safety critical systems like ADC along with infotainment versus some partitioning of those systems, and even within that partitioning allowing for some redundancies to be implemented.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the way I would describe the transition is you've seen a very rapid transition from MCU-based systems to domain controllers in the last part of the previous decade. As you went into the first part of this decade, you started to see a transition towards zonal controller architectures with a lot of central compute systems. So, getting to maybe 6 big ECUs in the car, and in some cases going down even further. What the trend depicts is that silicon is integrating a lot of functionality that used to previously be discrete and disparate. So as that journey continues, you're going to see a couple of different things changing. First, new car architectures are going to be thinking about the cabin and what aspects of the cabin, what features in the cabin can be integrated onto a discrete piece of silicon, which is, a cockpit or an IVI piece of silicon that is become your smart cabin controller. The second piece of integration obviously is the same thing but on ADAS or on automated driving. Cameras, radars, LiDAR, and then the drive policy, the perception policy running on a second piece of silicon. Now, what we have done with our architecture by introducing Flex is that we have architecturally allowed both of these independent solutions to run on the same piece of silicon, should you choose to. So if you decide, hey, I have decided to move both of these domains virtually onto the same piece of silicon, and for certain tiers of vehicles, I would like to actually have an integrated solution. That is something that we call Snapdragon Flex. We support it. We actually have customers that will be launching with this architecture middle of next year. So not only is it a concept that we introduced, maybe in the last year and a half, 2 years, but the pace at which the ecosystem is embracing it is actually moving very fast. And you might ask the question, why is that happening and why does it differ between one type of OEM versus the other? Many OEMs who, first of all, own their entire stack in-house. They own their ADAS stack, they own their sensor configurations, they own their cockpit configurations, and they've defined for themselves what type of innovation, what type of advancement they need to drive for which tier of vehicle. They're able to drive this integration quite easily because they understand the type of implementation that they're running. They own their IP in-house. As you start to look at other perhaps more complex OEMs that have a lot of mix of IP that they own and IP that they have outsourced, now the level of complexity is a little bit higher. So you really have to find a reason to bring in that level of integration. That's one dimension. The other piece that we are also seeing is cost pressures. As OEMs start to realize that, for example, I need good enough ADAS and good enough cockpit for a certain market because that isn't really necessarily the selling feature in that market. Could I integrate both of those domains onto the same piece of silicon? And because we have invested heavily in safety grade silicon, in safety grade software, everything that we are doing is certified, it's proven, that gives customers the confidence, hey, if you want to exercise this next step of integration, the option is there. Is every OEM going down that path? No, not really. But we are starting to see many OEMs think about certain parts of their portfolio where they say, hey, it might be interesting for us to think about trying to do this because this integration is going to come and we need to be ready for it. So I would say we are in the first innings of this flex level of integration, but different OEMs have different ability to be able to move at different speed, if that makes sense.
So would it be fair to describe that as it's part of your scalability strategy that you've got a common hardware, software architecture that can be deployed for more cost-sensitive applications all the way up to performance-level applications, and you can scale your solutions accordingly?
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, that's exactly how we see it, Phil.
So in the past, we talked about, one of the driving forces for most OEMs, especially for the traditional OEMs, for these new architectures was EVs. It was really an opportunity to kind of blow up the architectures and start with a clean sheet of paper. Now that we've seen some slowdown in the adoption of EVs, and by slowdown, I mean it seems to be growing less quickly than it was previously forecasted. It's still growing, and especially in China. But as the EV landscape changes, how do you see that affecting the architectures that we were just talking about over the next 5 to 10 years for you guys?
Yeah, I think there isn't really any one straightforward answer. First of all, we are fairly agnostic to the powertrain. Now, It is true that a lot of OEMs, they bet on the change in the vehicle EE architecture to be coincident with the adoption of an EV architecture. So yeah, there are many OEMs that connected those two. And so wherever maybe programs have slowed down, the architecture shift has also slowed down. But at the same time, I would say the transition towards software-defined vehicle necessitates a central compute thought process. And that transition is happening regardless of EV or combustion engine. And it's happening at different pace at different OEMs because the dependencies and the constraints are all very different. But I would say today there are so many variants of architectures inside small and large OEMs because these are determined by partnerships in China, partnerships in the US, a lot of internal innovation going on. So there is not a one-size-fits-all OEM architecture anymore. Every OEM is experimenting with a variety of different architectures because they want to make sure that they're able to transition to a modern software-defined vehicle. And so we are actually in the middle of pretty much all of them. And we are not seeing any slowdown or impact of a delay in EV adoption as influencing any slowdown on, SDV, etc.
One of the other things that we look at in terms of architectures is the silicon content as things become more centralized. And as of right now, when we look out to 2030, for central compute systems, they make up, give or take about 20% of the market. But of that 20%, really a small fraction is going to be single SoC based. I think from what you've said here, that may sound a little more pessimistic than what your view is, that the centralized solution based on Flex is going to have a larger share of the market in that time frame than maybe we've currently forecasted?
Yeah, I think, with a lot of these things, when you are doing something at the bleeding edge, when you are probably the only one that is pushing for it, it's very difficult to predict, in my mind, what the market dynamics are going to look like, because it really comes down to the provenness of that platform. If you're able to deploy it, it scales up. It is something that becomes fairly straightforward in terms of how it gets deployed, how the performance looks like. Then I think the adoption is going to go up, because when an OEM looks at how, the lead OEM deployed it, why would they not do it? There is significant cost savings that they're able to get. So just in terms of the benefit, of the bottom line, that is certainly there. Then it goes back to all the points I was making earlier in terms of your complexity and what you own, what you don't, how you're organized. But I do feel like the types of chips that we are building and the architecture that we have lends itself very nicely for flex type architectures to be adopted very broadly.
Okay. One of the other things that I think is relatively unique to Qualcomm is your use of modules, your QAMs, the Qualcomm automotive modules. Can you talk a little about that strategy and how that is managed in terms of supply chain, given some of the pain and suffering the industry went through not too many years ago?
Yeah. So I think the primary reason for us to get into the QAM business was we started to realize that the level of complexity that advanced SoCs bring to automotive, is probably the most complex electronics component that you're dealing with in the vehicle. And one of the big challenges is if you are working with every customer on a one-by-one basis, that adds a significant amount of delay to time to market, because every OEM has to do their own validation, their own design, just becomes an impediment to scaling quickly. So the reason to introduce QAMs was for us to actually simplify how these very complex SoCs get deployed in an environment. And so the QAM is designed to be very automotive, PCB friendly, allows tier ones to essentially take our QAMs deployed and run with the design fairly quickly. We provide a lot of reference infrastructure, a lot of reference software, hardware, design capabilities, and that I think has served us quite well. We've been doing it for a couple of generations, and it's worked out quite well for us.
And are you finding that, because the tier ones obviously are under a tremendous amount of pressure, as everybody is, but the tier ones in particular right now, that the QAMs don't threaten the tier ones positions. They actually can enable the tier ones to continue to bring unique value add to the OEMs?
Yeah, I think, our approach actually is a little bit different. The types of products that we are building have such high levels of complexity, especially when you bring in the performance, the thermal solutions that you need, the performance requirements, the size requirements, that the effort involved for each tier one to build their own solution is expensive, requires a tremendous amount of hand-holding, certainly adds a lot of time to the overall time to market, requires unique certification, quality certification, now safety certification. So the determination we made, and we've, obviously canvassed all of our tier one partners on this. This just allows us to move much, much faster. The timelines that we have, for example, now for our latest generation chips, we can go from the time that we deliver the solution to an OEM to the time that they deploy is within 16 months, right? That is unheard of. And we would not have been able to go do that if we didn't solve at the QAM level.
Okay. Interesting. You had, you'd intimated this earlier in our conversation today, but you guys announced in your recent earnings that automotive was about $1 billion a quarter now. Given that automotive and IoT are two of the biggest growth areas year over year for Qualcomm, can you help connect the dots, or what's the strategic arc that goes from, kind of the traditional handheld market that or handset market that the Qualcomm is known for, to now automotive, and in the future into IoT and robotics? I think there's some things connecting everything, so not just discrete business units that will have their own strategies going on.
Yeah. So, no, I think it's an excellent question, and I'm responsible for industrial robotics and automotive. So this is what I live and breathe every day. I think there are a few things that are going on in the industry that are quite unique and very timely. I think first of all, the definition of edge intelligence across the automotive business, across the latest industrial transformation going on across our enterprises, our factories, and then of course robotics and humanoids is a brand new segment. The one thing that is common across all of these is the concept that the edge is becoming very much in vogue, very much relevant in terms of where is the data, where is the analog to digital conversion, how do you understand a situation and extract information from it. So AI at the edge is a major trend that we are certainly seeing across many, many different market segments. And to be able to accomplish that, you need a collection of technologies at scale. You need CPUs, you need GPUs, you need sensors, AI processors, you need multimedia, you need power consumption that is very highly performant. In the case of automotive, you need to build a safety infrastructure. And you need to do all of this at scale. So what we've been able to do over the last decade or so is to make this very seamless pivot from what are the things that make us very unique in the handset business. Let's take all of that technology, but then let's then instantiate that technology for very different products, for very different markets, and then move into those ecosystems, embrace those ecosystems, work with that customer base, work with that uniqueness of what is needed there, and essentially create these new businesses. So we've been at this, I've been doing this for over almost a dozen years now. And there are a lot of similarities between the needs in automotive versus industrial. A lot of common themes in terms of the focus on reliability, on quality, on safety, the life cycles, the types of customers you're working with. And I think it's a very good analog to the diversification mandate that we have in the company and how, the approach that we are taking to kind of go down the path of implementing that.
Interesting. Thank you. Last year at the Snapdragon Summit, the Snapdragon Ride and Cockpit Elite SoCs were introduced. And now we're at IAA, almost a year later. In between, you've had Shanghai, you've had some other auto shows. What do you think of the journey for the last year, and where do you guys think the journey is going from this point? Any hints of what CES might look like, or beyond that, in terms of the products and the solutions that you're introducing?
So, I'll try and connect this to your earlier comment about the $1 billion a quarter. So, we are obviously very proud of what we've accomplished. We have delivered on that $1 billion a quarter goal 1 year in advance of what we had said we would make happen back in 21. And I think that's a very resounding, indication of the confidence that the ecosystem has just had with the products that we have launched. This business for us has become all about executing to a very complex, very highly scalable, very highly performant roadmap. We had announced Snapdragon Elite in Hawaii in October of 24, and you will see those products in cars in the first half of 26. So the pace at which automotive is embracing next generation super advanced SoC technology is unheard of. There is not really any precedent, not really any parallel in terms of how quickly this market is moving. And I think all of the events, whether it's Shanghai or we recently had an auto show in India, we will of course be in full force at IAA. It's really, a data point, an opportunity for us to be able to share what we've been doing with customers all over the world that are using the Snapdragon Digital Chassis, and then really the execution prowess of the team who, day in and day out is helping launch all these products on time. And then, with this latest partnership with BMW on the ADAS stack, this allows us to take the business into the next gear and really start to focus on yet another new journey in terms of building driver assistance stacks for the automotive industry. So yeah, I think we've been pretty busy and, really exciting times in automotive.
Anything else at IAA you want to direct people's attention to?
You must check out the demonstration that we have in the BMW iX3. I think everybody that will visit us will really enjoy that. And again, thank you, Phil, very much for having me on.
Yeah, well, great, Nakul. It was really enjoyable. Appreciate your time and the information.
Thank you, Phil.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all you listeners for tuning in as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode at autology@spglobal.com. You can also find out more at autotechinsights.spglobal.com. Don't forget to hit all the subscribe, follow, and like buttons to stay on track with the latest Autology podcasts. We look forward to you joining us again in the next episode. Bye for now.